Didn't land here by accident. Somewhere inside you, something ancient, wise, and luminous has been whispering for a long time. That whisper may have gone unheard for years beneath the noise of daily life, but lately it's grown louder. You've been sensing a shift. It doesn't always come in the form of clarity. In fact, it often begins in the form of unraveling. The things you once counted on, routines, beliefs, identities, suddenly seem less stable. The ground beneath you feels less certain. But here's what Carl Jung understood better than most. Chaos in the psyche is not always destruction. More often, it is preparation. Number 1. You begin to question what once felt unquestionably true, not out of rebellion, not to be edgy or different, but because something inside you refuses to keep living on autopilot. Beliefs you once swore by now feel outdated. Goals you used to chase suddenly seem hollow. Even your identity, the way you see yourself, feels like it no longer fits. And this is terrifying, but it's also sacred, because this is how the real journey begins, not when you get answers, but when you finally stop pretending to be asleep. Jung taught that the unconscious doesn't communicate in direct language. It speaks in symbols, dreams, and inner tension. So when you start feeling disoriented, confused, or restless for no obvious reason, it may not be because something is wrong. It may be because something deeper is waking up. You're not falling apart. You're breaking open. And that's a big difference. You may find yourself unable to tolerate shallow conversations. You may start to pull away from people, routines, or jobs that once felt normal. This is not regression. It's not failure. It's a sacred dismantling. Think of a seed underground. Before it sprouts into light, it first splits open. That split is painful, but necessary. The shell must die for the life inside to emerge. You are that seed. So if your thoughts have turned inward, if you've begun to question everything from your career path to your friendships to the very meaning of life, congratulations. You're not losing yourself. You're finding your way back to something real, back to yourself. Number 2, you feel a quiet disconnection from the person you used to be. This disconnection may be subtle at first. It's not always dramatic or visible from the outside. You still go to work. You still talk to friends. But inside, something's shifted. You're not interested in the same things anymore. The hobbies that once excited you now feel flat. The routines that once brought comfort now feel like cages. Even your own voice, how you speak, what you say, feels unfamiliar. Carl Jung would call this the erosion of the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. He believed that the persona is necessary, but only up to a point. When growth is ready to occur, that mask begins to slip. And as it slips, your true self starts to emerge, not with noise, but with silence. You might notice yourself withdrawing from social media, avoiding certain people, or craving solitude. Not because you're depressed, but because your soul is asking for space. You are no longer content with imitation. You are craving authenticity. This in-between phase is hard. You're no longer the old you, but not yet the new you. It feels like standing in the middle of a bridge at night, unable to go back, unsure of what's ahead. But that bridge is not punishment. It's transformation. People around you may not understand. They may say you're changing like it's a bad thing. But that's because they're speaking from the comfort of the known. You're walking toward the unknown. And though it may feel lonely, it's also liberating. You're not broken. You're breaking free. This quiet disconnection from your former self is one of the clearest signs that you are stepping into a new chapter of your life. It means your soul has decided. It's time. Time to live more honestly. Time to love more bravely. Time to become who you really are. Jung once said, "You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become." And right now, in this shedding, you are choosing. Choosing to no longer fit into what once kept you small. Choosing to no longer betray yourself for belonging. Choosing to begin again, not at the surface, but from the soul. Number 3. You start letting go of what once seemed essential. For most of your life, certain things probably felt non-negotiable. Status, approval, recognition, control. Maybe it was a job title that gave you a sense of worth, or the admiration of others that made you feel seen. But now, those once solid pillars are starting to wobble. And it's confusing, because nothing on the outside may have changed, but everything inside has. What once lit a fire in you now barely flickers. The praise you used to chase now echoes hollow. You're not lazy. You're not lost. You're waking up. Carl Jung called this the soul's revolt against the collective script. The moment when your deeper self starts refusing to play along with what no longer resonates. It's not that you stop caring. It's that you stop pretending. Your soul is tired of wearing costumes to earn applause. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, like sunlight creeping over the horizon. But once it starts, you can't ignore it. You begin to ask different questions. What actually matters to me now? What kind of life would feel like mine? Not someone else's version of success. These are not shallow questions. They're sacred invitations. Your values begin to change. Maybe success no longer means money, but meaning. Maybe love no longer means attachment, but truth. Maybe you realize you've been climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. That realization can feel like grief, but it's also your liberation. You may feel untethered, even disoriented. But this is the soul's way of clearing space. Not for more stuff, but for deeper alignment. As you stop trying to impress the world, you begin to impress something far more important: yourself. This is the moment when ambition becomes intention, when productivity gives way to purpose, and when what I do becomes less important than who I am while I do it. You're not giving up. You're shedding what no longer fits. You are no longer driven by what the world demands. You are guided by what your soul desires. That shift, that quiet rebellion, that's not weakness. That's growth. Number 4. You start listening to your intuition more than your logic. There was a time when you needed proof, evidence, a plan. You made decisions based on what made sense. You ignored the gut feeling, the dream that haunted you, the strange pull in your chest, because they didn't fit the data. But now, something's changed. You walk into a room and before anyone speaks, you know something's off. You read a message, and something in you just knows it's not the full story. You meet someone, and your body tells you before your brain does. This is either safe or it's not. This isn't magic. It's not woo-woo. It's your deepest intelligence coming online. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is more than just the rational mind. Beneath our conscious awareness lies a vast reservoir of wisdom, the unconscious. And intuition is how the unconscious speaks. You've had this power all along, but now you're finally quiet enough to hear it. This doesn't mean you stop thinking. It means you stop overthinking. You stop using your mind to silence your knowing. You stop outsourcing your decisions to people who don't live in your skin. You begin to trust something older than fear, something truer than logic. It might feel risky at first, because logic gives you the illusion of control. Intuition offers no guarantees, only alignment. But alignment is what you've been craving all along. At this stage, decisions become simpler. Not easier, but simpler. Not because life is less complex, but because you are more clear. You begin to feel a pull toward certain people, projects, places. You can't always explain why, but you don't need to, because your soul is no longer asking for permission. It's asking for presence. You might start journaling more, paying attention to dreams, noticing synchronicities, those weird little signs that seem like coincidences but feel like messages. That's not randomness. That's resonance. Your body becomes a compass. Tightness says no. Ease says yes. And the more you trust that internal guidance, the more peaceful you become. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are finally aligned with the truth within you. This is not detachment from reality. This is deeper contact with it. You are no longer living from the neck up. You are living from the soul out. And Jung would remind us, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Right now you are awakening. The next part will explore signs number 5 and number 6, diving deeper into the psychological and spiritual transformation that unfolds once your values and intuition become your new compass. Number 5. You no longer feel at home in environments that once felt safe. You walk into a room that used to feel familiar, but something is different. The conversations feel hollow. The energy feels stale. You can't quite explain it, but the place, the people, even the laughter. It doesn't feel like yours anymore. This is not about being antisocial. It's about becoming conscious. Carl Jung believed that the soul goes through cycles of expansion. And with every cycle, the old container no longer fits. What used to hold you begins to feel like a cage. This discomfort isn't a problem. It's a message. The message: you're growing. It's subtle at first. You start noticing how drained you feel after certain interactions, how small you become around certain people. You notice the mask you instinctively reach for when you're with them, not because you want to lie, but because the truth wouldn't fit in that space. And here's the shift. You stop blaming yourself. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What doesn't align here anymore?" Because the problem isn't that you're too much. It's that your spirit is too awake to keep playing small. What once felt comforting now feels confining. What once grounded you now feels like emotional quicksand. And while part of you might mourn the loss, another part is relieved. That part knows. You're not abandoning anything. You're answering the call of your own becoming. This is the soul's silent revolt against comfort zones. Because comfort isn't always nourishing. Sometimes it's just familiar pain. You start to crave different conversations, ones that stretch, not shrink you. You begin to seek out people who reflect your values, not just your past. You realize that peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of authenticity. And when the old world no longer mirrors your truth, the soul does what it must. It moves on. This isn't cold. It's sacred. It's not rejection. It's realignment. You are not walking away. You are walking toward the life that fits who you've become. Toward spaces that don't just welcome you. They see you. Number 6. You feel an irresistible pull toward healing and self-understanding. There was a time when you just wanted to fix things on the surface, a better schedule, a better job, a better version of you. But now you want depth. Now you want truth. You don't want to escape the pain anymore. You want to understand it. You start asking questions that scare most people. Why do I attract certain relationships? Why do I still feel unworthy, even when I achieve something? What wound am I repeating? These questions aren't signs of breakdown. They're signs of breakthrough. Carl Jung called this stage individuation, the process by which the true self is born, not by adding more, but by integrating what's been disowned. That's what healing is. not fixing, integrating. You begin to meet parts of yourself you once avoided: the scared child, the angry teen, the exhausted adult who pretended to be okay for too long. And instead of judging those parts, you start listening to them. You offer them what they never had: presence. This is deep, uncomfortable work, because it requires you to sit with what's unresolved, to face the stories you told yourself to survive. But within those stories are clues to your freedom. The patterns you hated are actually maps. The pain you resisted is actually a doorway. You realize your triggers aren't random. They're signals. Every overreaction is an underhealed wound asking to be seen. And slowly, gently, you begin to heal. Not by force, but by attention. Not by bypassing, but by embracing. You stop running from the darkness, because you've discovered the gold is in the shadow. This is when real self-love begins. Not the feel-good slogans, but the hard-won love that comes from facing your truth and choosing compassion anyway. You forgive yourself for not knowing. You thank yourself for surviving. You start building a relationship with the parts of you that never had a voice. And the more you do this, the more alive you feel. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating wholeness. You stop measuring progress by appearance and start measuring it by inner peace. You realize healing isn't linear. It spirals, and every spiral brings you deeper. Not into pain, but into clarity. You are not just learning to heal. You are remembering that you were never broken. The version of you that is emerging now is not better. It is truer. You are no longer just surviving. You are beginning, at last, to live. Number 7. You begin to detach from what no longer resonates. With peace, not panic. At first, it doesn't feel like a moment. It feels like an atmosphere shift. A song you once loved no longer moves you. A habit you used to cling to now feels unnecessary. The urgency, the chasing, the need to prove, to please, to be seen. It fades. Not from bitterness, but from awakening. What's happening? You're not giving up. You're letting go. There's a difference. This final sign doesn't arrive with drama. It comes quietly, like a curtain falling after a long, exhausting play. The roles you played, the personas you wore, the expectations you upheld, they dissolve. Not with resistance, but with grace. Carl Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And this is what detachment is. Not a rejection of the world, but a deeper embrace of truth. You are no longer magnetized by the old stories. You see them for what they are: outdated scripts written for a past version of you. Scripts that kept you safe, sure, but also scripts that kept you small. Now, you crave something else. Not bigger, not louder, just real. And with that craving comes clarity. You begin to understand that not everything falling away is a loss. Some of it is release. Some of it is rescue. You stop forcing connections. You stop over-explaining. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that never honored your fullness. You no longer beg to be understood. You simply become. And those meant to understand will find you. This detachment doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. You feel lighter, not because life has become easier, but because your spirit is no longer entangled in what was never yours to carry. You find power in silence, meaning in solitude, and joy in simplicity. You begin to prefer the stillness of alignment over the noise of expectation. You're not alone in this. Many people feel guilt for detaching, for walking away, for outgrowing. But that guilt is not yours to keep. It was taught. You don't have to hold what no longer holds you. You're allowed to move on from places where you felt unseen. You're allowed to release patterns that exhaust your nervous system. You're allowed to say, "I love myself too much to stay where I can't be real." This is the sacred rebellion of the soul, not loud, not angry, but absolutely resolute. Your becoming will cost you your old life, but what you gain is immeasurable. Peace, clarity, presence, purpose, and most of all, wholeness. You're not disappearing. You're returning to the self that was buried beneath the noise. And that return is the beginning of everything. Now let's pause here for a moment. Maybe something in this resonated with you, like a whisper you've been hearing for a while. Maybe you're standing in the middle of this transformation right now, unsure whether it's collapse or rebirth. I want you to know, the fact that you're feeling it means you're already awakening. So I'd love to ask you something. Which of these 7 signs speaks to you the most right now? Was it the questioning of your identity, the craving for solitude, the release of toxic patterns? Let me know in the comments. Your words might help someone else who's feeling exactly the same. And if this journey felt like something you needed to hear, don't keep it to yourself. Give it a like to let me know this message found you at the right time. Subscribe if you're walking this path of inner transformation. We're building a space for real healing here. And hit the bell so you don't miss what's next. We're only just beginning. Because as Carl Jung reminded us, the path to wholeness isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been. And that is the most courageous journey of all. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, trust the signs. You're not falling apart. You're awakening.